Hey guys, Chris here, welcome back to another video. This month we have an PC build where we have this pretty good for the price PC. It rocks a RX 560. I wanted to mention right here, it is an RX 560, but for some reason in the entire video, all my receipts or whatever, my script, I kept typing RX 550. It is a 560, I just don't know how to read. i5 4th generation, 8 gigs of RAM, so it's pretty entry level to mid range PC depending on the way you look at it. And especially for the price where it's coming in at around $150, definitely good for the price. So let's go ahead and get into how I got the parts, the build process, the benchmarks, and yeah. But before this video starts today, I want to mention only about 1% of you guys are actually subscribed. So if you guys actually subscribe to my channel, it really helped me out. I do take a lot of time making these videos. And yeah. Okay, so getting into it. First off, we have our CPU and motherboard. The CPU was pulled out of a computer. Just kind of estimating all the other parts that were inside of the computer, we brought the CPU down to $3 for an i5 4460. It's a 4-core, 4-thread CPU, which is still pretty good. It was pulled out of a Dell Dimensions, I think it was, computer that you can actually see in one of my part hunt videos. Along with that, we have this eBay motherboard. It was an HP ProDesk something. It's a LGA 1155 motherboard, and I got it for $15. And it supports our processors. It's a i5 4th generation. It should support it fine. Next up, we're going to go ahead and start installing the bracket for the cooler. Our cooler we went with was this, very basic but okay cooler. It's an RGB cooler. It's fine for our CPU. It didn't actually have the right brackets because the HP motherboard proprietarily has like these little, they have like their own weird little standoffs, so I had to like improvise and actually screw down the bracket to the standoffs, which required some weird kind of screw bits that kind of belongs on SSDs and hard drives, but it was fine. So I went ahead, installed the cooler, and tucked it in, did a little bit of cable management, and then it was time for the RAM. So the RAM was some pretty generic, the main components here are actually definitely very generic, but it's a one stick of 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM running at 1600 megahertz. 8 gigabytes is going to be fine for this build, especially, considering this is supposed to be under the $125 budget. Next up is our case. It's an Inwin ATX case. It's definitely an older case due to how many freaking drive brackets there are, geez. But it came with an red LED fan, which I thought, added a little bit of spice to the build, kind of like the RGB added on into it, which you're going to see more of in a moment here. But we went ahead, checked out the case, seemed to be fine. I also put this little like dual USB bracket PCIe thing into the PC, just to give us some more USB plugs, but it didn't actually end up working, so I just took it out later. So the case ended up being $20, but it also came with this power supply, which added an extra $10 to it. It's a Elias 550 watt. It's a very basic power supply, just like the rest of the build, which I still think is going to be fine for this build. It doesn't draw too much power. So went ahead, installed that. Went in pretty smoothly, actually. So I think something really cool about this case is probably the way you actually can mount a drive. So I actually ran out of SATA cables when I was doing this, so I couldn't really use any of the drive bays. But on the top of the case, you can actually install an SSD at the very top, which I thought was pretty cool. And it had some like SATA cable attached and stuff, so I didn't really need another SATA cable, which kind of helped me good because I was fresh out, like I'm completely out right now. So with the hard drive in, we can go ahead and put our motherboard inside. I turned the motherboard on its side, that way I can get a better angle for you guys, and also because it was kind of hard to actually screw it in, mostly due to the fact that it's a micro ATX motherboard in an ATX case, so it kept trying to slide down and stuff. Unfortunately though, it didn't come with an IO shield, which kind of sad because aesthetically it doesn't look as good when I'm trying to flip it on Facebook. But yeah, it went in pretty good. I went ahead, connected the SATA cables. I tried connecting the USB stuff, but the external one I didn't really help that much. But I connected USB 3 ports, basic USB, connected the power cable. The CPU power was actually hard to get in because it was in a weird spot on the motherboard. So I have to actually route it under where our graphics card is in order to actually get it to stretch far enough to go in. It was actually not as tight as I thought it was going to be, but it did okay. Finally, we have the FFX RX 550 2 GB. It's a very, very low power graphics card. It doesn't have that much capability, but in this build, it's gonna fit fine, basically. It cost me $30, so I think that was pretty good. And yeah, it's not very big, so it doesn't get in the way of anything. And it covers our CPU power pretty well. It only takes one 6-pin power connector, which, it doesn't have that much weight, doesn't have that much power, so I think for the graphics card, it's actually fine for this build. And yeah, it was ready. Finally, the last thing I tackled was some cable management. I put some zip ties in the back of the case. I also attached this LED strip that cost me an extra $8, but it made the build aesthetically pleasing and it brought our total all the way to $120 for this PC. So now that we have the RGB strip installed, let's go ahead and turn this thing on. And there we go. Okay, it's on, sighting up. So I'm going to go ahead, close it, tie it up. And now we have our PC built. So moving on to benchmarks, we tested some games here. I completely removed Apex out of here, so we're down to I think 4 games, which is still fine. It gets you a pretty okay idea what the performance of the PC is like. But we're gonna go ahead and start off with Cinebench R20, where in Cinebench we actually get a score of 1185, which I think is okay. Once you hit like the 1,000 range, I think you're pretty good when it comes to the CPU. Moving on now to CSGO. So CSGO actually got an average of 73, which is kind of low compared to like our usual builds around the $100 price point. We got a minimum of 50 and a max of 330. So I guess that's okay. If you really wanted it to, perform, nothing going below 60, I'd probably recommend turning down the settings. Next up is Fortnite, where in Fortnite we get an average of 81 FPS, which is better than I really expected. We get a minimum of 57 and a max of 123. Again, if if you want better FPS, you could probably just turn the settings down to low. We're testing a medium right now, but I think for 81 FPS average is pretty good. Next up we have Minecraft, where in Minecraft we get an average of 186, a minimum of 88, and a maximum of 414. Next up we have Rocket League, where we get an average of 64 FPS, a minimum of 42, and a max of 72. So it does pretty good when it comes to, like some basic games. It doesn't do great, but for $120, I think it does pretty good. I also tested a couple other things just to give more of a, perspective on what it can do. I tested out a 10-minute render on Adobe Premiere Pro with some like color grading options and, like some mid-range video editing, and for a 10-minute clip it took 17 minutes and 51 seconds compared to my main PC, which took about 12. But I think it's it's still in there. Now the final benchmark I tested was 3D Mark Time Spy Extreme, but the weird thing is I couldn't actually get it installed on the computer. It was having like some weird issue where it wouldn't let me actually install it from Steam. So these are some results from another person who had pretty much the exact same setup. He got an average of 1,304, a GPU score of 1,191, and a CPU score of 2,827. So it's about, compared to my main PC, probably half as good. It's still okay. Like I definitely would say like if this were like a gift for someone who's never been into PCs before, it'd be an okay gift. Yeah, I think that's it. So let's go ahead, move on to like final thoughts, and wrap this up. Well, guys, if you can see, like, this PC is pretty good. Like, there's not really anything wrong with it, except you have to press F1 when you first turn it on. But I think other than that, this PC is actually really good for, like, entry level to mid-range gaming. It is really good in 1080p. It gives everyone a 60 FPS advantage. And yeah, I think that's about it. If you guys did enjoy the video, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe if you guys want to see more on the channel. My name's Chris. See you on the next video, and bye.